Chapter 4 Charlie, the Search for the Masculine Self. One of the most intelligent and insightful men I have ever had the privilege to know was Charles Keenan, or Charlie as he asked me to call him. Charlie had a slight build and somewhat effeminate mannerisms, but this certainly indicated no softness of character. Charlie was a man of unusual strength and clarity of purpose. 32 years old, Charlie was head of a large university biomedical library where he had worked for several years. He was well-read, well-spoken, and highly educated. At Charlie's first session, he walked across the room and sat down quickly, like someone who knew exactly what he wanted. "In the past 10 years, I've done quite a bit of flirting with the gay lifestyle," he said. "For a year now, I've been in a gay relationship. A guy named Derek. It's not a bad relationship. We treat each other well, but I want much more in life. I can see that this isn't all of it." "What do you mean by all of it?" I asked. "I'm not getting a wife, I'm not getting children, and I'm not getting the kind of relationship I want to grow old with." "And what kind of a relationship is it that you're looking for?" "Well, I just feel there's something missing from what one man can give another." He paused and sighed, trying to find the right words to continue. "You know, most of the gay guys I've met insist that homosexuals are born that way. But I can't help seeing it as an insult to my dignity to be told I'm this way because of something genetic. I have been a part of the gay lifestyle long enough to tell you that when a man craves masculinity so badly that he has to try to suck it out of another guy, then there is undeniably a big problem. I don't want to be gay," he continued angrily. "I'll never believe that that's been decided for me by some kind of genetics." I lit my pipe and leaned forward, eager to hear more of what this man had to tell me. "I've read a lot about homosexuality," Charlie said. "Working at a university library has given me the opportunity to read dozens of volumes on the subject." He chuckled. "I spend my lunch hour around the WM16 section. In fact, one of the books I've read is your Reparative Therapy of Male Homosexuality. It made a lot of sense to me, and I decided to call you when I found out you were here in the Los Angeles area." "I'm glad you got something from it," I told him. "What about the syndrome of male gender identity deficit, which I describe in it? Does this reflect your own experience accurately?" Charlie laughed. "It's my life story." "Well, tell me about yourself then. Let's begin with your childhood." We both sat back in our chairs and made ourselves comfortable. Charlie sighed and looked out the window. "You know, looking back at myself as a boy," he said, "I can see I was born artistic, maybe a little unassertive." I could see that he was eager to speak, but finding the right words was an obvious struggle. "I guess I didn't have the usual male buddies because I was kind of different. More on the sensitive side. I had an operation on my knee when I was young, which has left me with a bit of a limp, and that kept me out of a lot of masculine things. All that usual sandlot baseball stuff, but I don't think that any of that in itself means I had to be homosexual." "I agree," I said. "Many pre-homosexual boys fit the picture you have given me. Sensitive, non-aggressive, not being on the inside of male activities. But some other boys who grow up heterosexual also fit this picture. It takes something more than that to make a boy homosexual." "Well," Charlie continued, laughing, "I'm afraid I had that something more. I had the classic homosexual background. I was raised by a household of women with a smothering mother, a domineering grandmother, and 2 older sisters. My father basically decided very early on, I can't handle this family stuff. I'll be around, I'll pay the bills, but I'm not actually getting involved with anything that goes on in this household. So he didn't have much of a relationship with any one of us. He was basically a wimp, a nice guy, but an outsider." After a brief pause, Charlie proceeded. "I'm sure my dad had his own private inferiorities. There was really something wrong with him. Whether he was gay or not, there was some kind of a problem with his maleness. because he certainly didn't know how to conduct himself as a man in his own household. I really doubt he knew what to do with a son. He gets this little boy and he thinks, what the hell do I do with this? My mother and grandmother made me into a sissy. I read, I drew, I stayed at home, all that classic stuff. You could say that for many years, Mom absorbed me. She took my life for her own purposes. Her relationship with her own father was horrendous, also with her brother and later her husband. So I was the new little male, the moldable one that she could work out all her shit on. She wanted the kind of relationship with a male she had never had before, so she took me for herself and drained me. I imagine you never wanted to be close again to women, I commented. Well, actually, I have had a couple of girlfriends, but every woman I dated was like my mom. I had no self, no dignity, no boundaries with my mom, and I refused to marry my mom. Laughing, he said, I pick them perfectly. I always get trapped into what you've so aptly referred to as that good little boy role. He continued, I hate it. I was drained of my life being that good little boy. He pounded his fist on the armrest of his chair, his face betraying anger and embarrassment. So when did you figure out that you were homosexual? Charlie sighed and relaxed back into the deep cushions, closing his eyes for a moment. I was about 13, he said. I was invited to this camp-out party with a bunch of teenage guys. They invited me because I hung around with the girls, and I think they thought I could be an in for them. But then the stud of the group, Andy, got really friendly with me, and it got sexual, and bingo, here I'm accepted by the stud. I have this special relationship with the leader of the pack. I take care of his sexual needs, and he protects me. I interpreted, so sex became your instant entry into the world of males. That's right, he said. So here I am feeling like I'm a man. I'm one of them. I discovered a way to relate to this guy I'd always admired from a distance. I didn't know what was going on, but I thought, whatever it takes. And I had to admit, it was pretty exciting. So you were into sex with guys pretty much from that point on? Not really. It was a few more years before I got into that lifestyle. I had a couple of relationships with women in college, but this particular guy, Andy, was still in my fantasies. In fact, I always liked to imagine him joining us. I was confused. Do you mean while you were making love to a girlfriend, you fantasized about having sex with Andy? No. Andy was there supporting what I was doing, encouraging me. That's interesting. I think this fantasy of Andy was actually symbolically bolstering your injured masculine self, I said. Well, maybe so, because I'd imagine he would stand alongside of the bed and encourage me, and, he searched for the word, support me in having sex with my girlfriend. He'd tell me I was a stud, that I was doing the right thing, and he'd cheer me on while we were doing it. I clarified. This fantasy man serves as the support that symbolically repaired your deficit male identity. I guess you could say that, Charlie conceded. Because I was there for her, and to some degree I was enjoying it, but somehow I needed Andy. Charlie was able to function heterosexually, but he needed the image of another man's maleness. His use of the fantasy of Andy revealed one way the reparative drive is used to heal a man's injured masculinity. He also gave me a way of expressing what we would be doing in his therapy. Charlie, this whole therapy will be the actualization of that fantasy man from within the depths of your own psyche, so that you'll find him within, and you won't need to take another man's maleness sexually. To find him within. I like that idea. To draw on what I already am, but haven't actualized. Charlie said he wanted to give that idea some thought, and with that in mind, we closed our session. The following week, we decided to delve into some childhood issues. You know, Joe, as a kid I got shortchanged, he said. He sat on the edge of the chair. You could say being Mom's little man is how I got cheated. He opened a silver cigarette lighter. Excuse me, I hope you don't mind if I smoke. When I'm tense and excited, I just feel like I have to occupy my hands. That's all right. I passed him an ashtray from the bookcase and settled back to listen. I've done a lot of thinking about what you said in the last session. In a way, he gestured forcefully in the air with a cigarette. In a way, I've continued to cheat myself by becoming stuck in gay relationships and not challenging myself to become those men I fall in love with. I was born a man. It is my identity. It is something I want to be completely. He leaned forward, his voice rising in frustration. It's not that I never liked the idea. I've just felt insecure about my maleness. You know what I mean. I've always felt somehow that I was left out of the club of men. I really want to change that feeling. I want to claim the sense of manliness I envy in others, and I want to stop admiring other men. But you know what makes me angriest? He set down the cigarette and spoke emphatically. Society, psychology, the gay world. They want to tell me I was born desiring other guys. I wasn't born that way. It was a wound inflicted on me. As I listened, I couldn't help but feel admiration for this bright young man's hard-earned acquisition of self-understanding. He had struggled and questioned and fought with himself, and what he believed was clearly not an opinion that would have won him friends in the gay world. As I explained to you, my job offers me the opportunity to read lots of books on homosexuality, Charlie said. A lot of the older psychoanalytic books really fit my experience. The classic family of inadequate dad and over-involved mom. The kid who didn't like rough and tumble play. But if you read the recent books by gay psychologists, you'd think the whole world agreed that homosexuality was inborn, impossible to change, and in every way as normal as heterosexuality. How could it be normal? His voice rose and he shifted into angry profanity. You know, Joe, Mother Nature didn't make a dick to go into an asshole. It's sick, it's perverted, even in the animal world. When one dog mounts another, it's a dominance thing, and not something he'd do if there was a bitch in heat he could get to. Charlie laughed and settled back comfortably onto the chair cushions. Then he sighed, looked around, and said mischievously in a low voice, Want to hear a dirty joke? You know why scientists haven't found a cure for AIDS yet? You can't guess. Because they can't get those little white mice to butt-fuck. Charlie seemed pleased with himself for the uncharacteristic expression of profanity. I told him, You know, it's true, you sometimes see mounting behavior in animals. But no species of animal prefers homosexuality. As for homosexuality in other societies, all cultures strongly favor heterosexuality. Now I felt just as intense a need to express my convictions as Charlie had a moment before. Gay spokesmen say we're presumptuous to use our values when we decide if something is normal. But then where does society draw the line on normalcy? Don't you think pedophilia feels normal to the child molester? I don't know, Charlie said. That's an interesting question. Does it? There was an article in a 1990 issue of the Journal of Homosexuality, I said. 1/3 of the pedophiles in it claimed that their sexual desire for children was a natural part of their constitution. They felt it was innate, a fact of nature, inherent in them, and so forth, and they explained it by saying, This is just the way I am. Because they believed they were born that way, they felt they could not change. Therefore, they said they had the same right as other people to pursue the expression of their sexuality. That's incredible, Charlie said. Now, I'm not putting homosexuality in the same category as pedophilia, I said. Gay men are consulting adult partners. But both conditions are erroneously justified by the claim that they feel normal. Charlie pounded his fist to his knee and looked up at me intently. Don't our bodies proclaim the wisdom of nature by their design? Aren't we supposed to live out the natural male-female complementarity? Shouldn't all of this make perfect, good, obvious sense to everyone? Any man with that vision, I summed up, will never be satisfied being gay. The next week, Charlie decided he wanted to tell me about his previous therapists. He was eager to express his frustrations. "I've been with 3 therapists in the last 5 years," he said. "The first, I'm sure, was gay, although he never said so. He told me that I was gay and that I should accept it. He kept telling me to go to the Gay and Lesbian Community Services Center to make a circle of friends in the gay community. I went a few times, and the people I met there were nice, but I felt sorry for a lot of them. I really couldn't relate to them and where they were going. That psychologist had no concept of why I might be attracted to guys, and he did not want to help me explore the subject. He'd say, 'We don't need to know why a guy is heterosexual, do we? So why do we need to be concerned about why you're homosexual?' He totally avoided discussing how my relationship with my parents might have contributed. Before I left, I said to him, 'Look, I need you to support me in where I want to go in my life, not where you think I should be headed.' Of course, he felt I was denying some integral part of my nature. My second therapist was a young straight guy. He said I was lucky to be bisexual because I would have more sex partners to choose from." A loud laugh. Such idiocy. Forget him. Then I found a woman therapist, a really well-meaning Christian woman. She tried to support me in overcoming my gayness, but she just didn't know what to do. I spent my money teaching her what I knew from what I'd read. Finally, I discovered your book, and I came to you. I said, "Charlie, I've been amazed at your understanding of the condition, about what it means and where it comes from." He countered, "I'm amazed that others in my position don't seem to know or don't want to know. I've asked a lot of gay guys, 'Hey, why do you think you're gay?' They don't want to talk about it. They're scared to death." He thought for a moment, then said, "Choosing to live the gay lifestyle feels like a last resort, a convenient way of having some contact with someone. I had to waste too many years to find out that what I'm living is a shortcut. I could have gone on like that, kept on doing it, but then I realized that I'm not the kind of person who will just settle for something forever." Then Charlie verbalized a core issue of the homosexual condition. "I've always known I have an intimacy problem with both men and women, and I know it has to do with my homosexuality, but I'm not quite sure of the connection." He continued, "My biggest problem is feeling lonely all the time, disconnected. Even though I'm surrounded by people all day at work, I live in emotional isolation. Last week I felt empty, anxious, like jello. I didn't have the ambition to do a single thing, and every task simply felt like too much effort." A hopeless expression took over his attractive, gentle face. I waited for him to say more. He sighed and continued, "I've been successful recently in avoiding homosexual contacts. But maybe my success is just due to old age and waning libido." He smiled ruefully. In his little joke, I heard a clear tendency to discredit himself, not to give himself credit for his achievements. Many homosexual men in treatment are slow to give themselves credit for what they have accomplished. They have not been taught to recognize their personal power. Charlie sighed impatiently and looked me directly in the eye. "I'm doing without sex, but I'm lonely, and I want to know how I can give up having sex with men forever. It's just too difficult to do that by sheer willpower." "I'm glad you realize that," I said. "I feel too blah, too tired, too weary, like I'm in a rut with no way out." "This blahness," I said, "is a cover-up for an untapped energy that's just under the surface. If you don't get in touch with that energy and draw on it, you'll fall into a full-scale depression, and then guess what will happen?" I warned him. "Depression is the lull before the storm of sexual acting out again." "That I know all too well," Charlie agreed. "I can imagine myself hitting the bars in a big way if I don't do something about getting myself reconnected. I hope you can help me light the right fires and get back on track again." Funny thing, even though I know a lot about my problem intellectually, I still don't feel healed emotionally. "Well, Charlie, time's up for this week. So let's think on that paradox until the next session. Because yes, you're right. There's a world of difference between making change intellectually and making change emotionally. When we met again the following Tuesday, Charlie continued with the previous week's discussion. You know, you were right when you told me I'm very hard on myself. It's part of my problem. I never give myself credit for anything. I have a hard time patting myself on the back. I get enthused about a new idea and then I drop the ball, second-guess myself, and create all kinds of doubts and fears which I know are needless and unrealistic. I feel a constant, dull, deep hurt somewhere inside. Then he confessed, one of the things that keeps coming back to paralyze and depress me is that I don't know how to leave my parents, emotionally speaking, how to cut the umbilical cord and still, he searched for the right words, remain friends with them. To remain in a relationship with them, but not as a child, I clarified. Yes, to have some kind of equal relationship with them. He thought for a moment, then added, I don't know how to be real, to be myself around them, how to relate in a genuine way. I'm not sure what my feelings are toward them. As he began to confront how he had not been treated honestly by his parents, Charlie entered one of the more painful stages of reparative therapy. Out of their own narcissistic need, his parents, especially his mother, had required him to be the good little boy and thus compromise his own masculine, autonomous development. The hurt you feel inside comes from realizing you were not recognized for who you are as an individual, I said. In some ways, you were neglected, and in others, overindulged. Your parents did not give you a strong sense of who you were. It is this kind of childhood that has led authors Leanne Payne and Colin Cook to describe the homosexual as an orphan. Perhaps that's it, he said. Intellectually, I feel sure of myself. But emotionally, I felt like in some ways I'm nothing. I'm nobody, and it makes me angry. I said, going back and claiming your true identity will mean beginning to work your way back through the hurt. What about my anger, he asked. I also have a lot of anger. Of course, the anger is a defense against the hurt, the injustice. That's why so many of the guys are angry. Their anger is not just about the intolerance of society toward homosexuality. It comes from their awareness, on some deep level, that part of their essential identity was ripped off from them in their early years. But how do I acknowledge these feelings of anger toward my parents? Do I have to emotionally disown them? I don't think you can disown them, I said. The task is to be an adult with them, not a little boy manipulated by them. He sighed and said, I feel paralyzed when I think of what lies ahead of me. I said, this is a critical transitional phase in your therapy. You're not the manipulated little boy anymore, but you don't know yet how to be the autonomous adult. That's exactly where I'm at, he agreed. How do I become an adult in relationship to my parents? I know I can't change my dad. As a kid, I could never get him to acknowledge me in any way. Maybe if I had gone out for the sports Dad liked. He loved river rafting and fishing. I didn't go along with him more than a couple of times because I don't like swatting mosquitoes all night and listening to coyotes howl in the bushes. When I started refusing to go along with him on his trips, I really think he felt I was rejecting him. In some ways, I guess it was my fault that he abandoned me to Mom and my sisters. If you focus your therapy on changing your dad, you'll sabotage your treatment. You probably can't change your dad, but you can change how you relate to him. You don't want to set yourself up to be frustrated, because that will lead you back to some other guy, and that's not what I want anymore, he said abruptly. And you'll come back next week with the same issues anyway, I added. Yeah, you're right. Then he added thoughtfully, as soon as I turn my back on dealing with my dad, I face the struggles again. I can forget for a while, put the struggle out of my mind, but it's clear that I'm just buying time, that eventually I'm going to have to deal with this problem. If not by changing him, then by changing how I relate to him. I sensed the pressure Charlie was putting on himself and felt I needed to reassure him. It's not something you have to resolve instantaneously. The great benefit of this therapy is that there are so many ways of moving forward. Physical activity, developing healthy male friendships, starting a dialogue based on respect and mutuality with both of your parents. There are lots of challenges that will get you moving forward. Because I've just felt so stuck. The active, initiatory nature of reparative therapy emphasizes daily challenges in the world, I explained. But when you're stuck on a conscious level, look to the unconscious. Pay attention to what comes up in your dreams. Even though Charlie felt stalemated, there was much to be learned from the ever-flowing undercurrent of his unconscious. Pondering my words, Charlie said suddenly, "Last night I had a weird dream, which I can only recall vaguely. I had a hard time bringing it back into focus when I awoke. It was so brief." He hesitated, then said, "It's coming back. I'm standing naked in front of my father." He looked at me and said, "That was all." "Any feelings?" I asked. "No, not particularly." He shrugged his shoulders. "Were there any sexual feelings?" "Nothing. Just a very matter-of-fact attitude of, 'Here I am.'" "How do you understand this dream?" "I have no idea. I've never dreamed anything like that before." "What might you be trying to say by standing naked in front of your father?" He answered, "This is me. I want you to look at me." "This dream has a reparative theme," I said. "It is an attempt at self-healing. Your father represents the masculinity never reflected back to you, the masculine affirmation you wish you had had. You're saying to him, 'Look at me. See me for what I am. I'm a man. Acknowledge me.' This is exactly what you want. I think it's an important dream that represents exactly what you want to achieve here in therapy." Charlie smiled. "Precisely. The image is really so simple, but so perfectly symbolic. That's exactly what I want." A look of wonder crossed his face. "It's amazing. On some deep level of my psyche, I know what I need, and I'm already striving toward it." He laughed. "I guess I'm not as stuck as I think I am." And on that note, we concluded our session. A few sessions later, Charlie recalled how, as a youngster, he had submitted to sexually serving an older boy. Then, with considerable shame and embarrassment, he admitted that this had not just been a one-time incident, but in fact a regular pattern. He tried now to re-enter the world of that little boy. What had he been seeking? He asked, "What makes a kid do that kind of stuff, Joe?" The pain and shame still showed on his face. Something had to be acted out. Some need had to be fulfilled, I answered. "But why like that?" He sat stiffly in the chair, his face flushed and angry. Then Charlie answered his own question. "It was a search for me, something I wasn't finding in myself." Charlie had touched upon an essential truth about the homosexual condition, that it represents a striving toward a lost part of the self. When I began clinical work with homosexual men, at first I thought it was simply a sexual problem. Later, I saw it as a male gender identity problem. Today, I see it as a core identity problem. Homosexuality represents a loss of the true self and of aspects of one's masculine power. "Most of those boys I had sex with are married today," Charlie said. "They didn't get hung up on homosexuality like I did." Charlie's perception was accurate. For many boys, homoeroticism satisfies a normal curiosity. But for other boys, like himself, such behavior expresses a deeper emotional hunger. In Charlie, there was a need to fulfill his essential masculine identity, a need that he sought to meet in sexual intimacy with other males. I asked Charlie, "Did you find any satisfaction during the later years when you were a part of gay life?" "In some ways, yes," he said. "It could give me a very freeing feeling. I'd spend a couple of hours in a gay bar after a day of working so hard at the library. At last, I'd be in a world of guys who were in the same mess I was. And there was no pretense, nothing to hide. I might meet a guy and go home with him for a couple of hours. It would be like the pleasure of enjoying a good meal after a hard day of work." His use of the word meal struck me. Was the homosexual act comparable to eating, devouring? Could fellatio signify the same unconscious drive to take in something needed? Dinner can be both primitive and pleasurable, sparking fantasies of the other man inside the self, making the self stronger. I thought of the male initiation rites of primitive tribes such as the Sambia of New Guinea, where young boys are initiated into manhood and strengthened through the ritual of taking in the semen of older males. I was also reminded of Carl Jung's insight into the homosexual condition. As paraphrased by his biographer, homosexuality was, according to Jung, a repressed, undifferentiated element of masculinity in the man, which instead of being developed from the depths of his own psyche, is sought on a biological plane through fusion with another man. Jacobi, 1969, page 51. Charlie and I went on to talk about the patterns so often seen in families of homosexuals. While insisting that homosexuality is strictly genetic, gay apologists have discouraged research into the family origins of homosexuality. They offhandedly dismiss classic psychoanalytic findings on homosexuality as disproven and outdated. They fear that if we can prove a connection with unhealthy family patterns, then society will be more intolerant of homosexuality. Yet I've often asked myself, as important as tolerance is, why should it come at the expense of truth? Why can't we have both truth and tolerance? I explained to Charlie how the pre-homosexual boy is in a general way what Alice Miller calls the used child, but that he is used in a particular manner. The mother may use the pre-homosexual son to gratify those emotional needs that have been unmet by her husband. The good little boy she raises is the creation of a distorted feminine perception of what a male is supposed to be. The father, on the other hand, uses the pre-homosexual boy in a more subtle way. He may be loving but inadequate, or well-intentioned but neglectful. Sometimes the father has sacrificed the boy to the mother's needs for a pet. He gives the boy up to keep the mother happy. In any case, the use of the boy in this triadic relationship sacrifices his maleness. Charlie said slowly, "In other words, the boy may have been unacceptable to his mother until he extinguished his masculinity." "He never extinguished it," I pointed out. "He simply never had any encouragement to claim it. To remain in the good graces of mother, he may have even had to deny his desire for maleness. For mother's love, he had to submerge what we call his masculine strivings." "Was it because she wanted him to be her little boy forever?" Charlie asked. "Often. Many mothers want their sons to be good, pure, there for them as mommy's little pet. The role of the good little boy excludes maleness, since maleness carries with it independence, autonomy, and the exercise of personal power." I explained, what makes the boy different from the mother is precisely his masculinity. If he expresses it, his mother thinks he's going to be not like me. Some mothers feel threatened by this gender difference. "Kind of like she'd like him to be her partner," Charlie said, screwing up his face with a disgusted expression. "Yes," I said, adding, "these mothers do not consciously wish their sons to be homosexual. When they discover 20 years later that their son has a homosexual problem, they're very often shocked and saddened. They don't realize that they themselves helped to lay the foundation for this condition. And when the mother is creating this nice, neutered little boy, the father doesn't intervene." Charlie's voice carried a hint of anger. I answered, "Exactly. One important role of the strong and nurturant father is to disrupt the comfortable symbiotic bond of the mother-son relationship. Many fathers mean well, like yours, but simply don't see what is happening. So there may be many boys out there who had the same mother I had, but their fathers stepped in and stopped what was happening. If I'd had a stronger father who was more involved, the equation might have balanced out differently." "Absolutely. And perhaps if you yourself had been a little tougher and more resilient, Maybe you could have pushed your mother away and broken through your father's reserve and uninvolvement. But you were a sensitive child, and not the type who is apt to take on emotional challenges. This is why homosexuality is usually not a mother-son problem, or a father-son problem, but a mother-father-son problem, I explained. It's a balance among the three. The eminent psychiatrist Irving Bieber referred to it as the triadic relationship. Charlie recalled, "It's funny. I was recently looking at some family pictures, and my sister told me that every time we took a family photo, I didn't want to be a part of it. I kept slipping out of the range of the camera. A withdrawal, a feeling of differentness. I hear this all the time. The pre-homosexual boy doesn't feel like part of the family." "I sure didn't," Charlie said. "I can understand that, because you weren't taken seriously by your parents." "I was treated like a possession," he said, then added, "When I was in grammar school, I had a weight problem, and the kids at school used to tease me and called me a klutz and fatso. Yet my mother watched me proudly one day while I ate a whole chocolate cream pie by myself. To this day she'll talk fondly about how cute Charlie looked when he finished that whole pie in one sitting." "You were an adorable possession," I said. "Like the 2 little poodles she got as pets when we 3 kids had grown up and left her." He laughed. "Those dogs took our places." "You were made to live a false self that sacrificed both your autonomy and your masculine identity," I said. "People often don't realize they've been living a false self until they start to experience some freedom from it. As you start to live through your true self, you'll feel a sense of liberation, spontaneity, and inner power. The false self usually leaves a person feeling self-conscious, rigid, and somehow empty or dead inside." "And the feeling of the true self will stay with me in time?" Charlie asked. Then he said, a note of pleasure in his voice, "I've been starting to feel stronger. I've been making progress in my straight relationships, and I've been thinking of joining a gym." "Good. You're moving in the right direction." "I want to feel better about my body," he said. "I'm getting older, and I'm getting flabby," he said, patting his stomach, "which makes me depressed. I used to look really good, about the time I was in college. I had thrown off that fat boy image by losing a lot of weight and exercising so I'd feel sexy. It felt good to get noticed by the guys in the bar. You know, that sort of vanity thing." This vanity thing led to a discussion of the male homosexual's condition that I call alienation from the body. There is a tendency for gay men to perceive their own male body with a detached fascination, as though it were an object rather than subject. The homosexual's body, particularly the penis, is something he carries but does not own. This feeling of not owning one's own body may take the form of a sense of inferiority or superiority, but there is never a relaxed connectedness with it. Many clients express a sense of disconnectedness with their bodies starting in early boyhood. There is also an excessive modesty, which usually continues into adulthood. They may describe an unwillingness to take their shirts off, even at the beach or in hot weather. They describe a reticence to undress in front of other boys, even their brothers. This shyness may alternate with exhibitionism, which is an attempt to overcompensate for shyness. Both shyness and exhibitionism are forms of alienation from the body. This same sense of inferiority and discomfort resurfaces in later years when the young man typically develops an over-concern about his penis size. Associated with this is the phenomenon of being pee-shy or having difficulty urinating in the presence of other men in public restrooms. What we are seeing in this dynamic of alienation is a failure of the family, and father in particular, to integrate the boy with his masculinity by way of his own body. Even when describing his participation in sports, the homosexual often experiences an objective detachment. His tendency is to observe himself and his bodily movements, rather than sense himself as being his moving body. Because he lacks this trust and confidence in his natural movements, he is likely to envy this quality in straight guys. For this reason and others, I see homosexuality as not simply a sexual problem, but a larger problem in one's way of being in the world. Returning to the vanity problem, I said to Charlie, "Your wanting to become involved in physical improvement is great, but it shouldn't be pursued for vanity's sake. You don't want your body to be an object to show off. That's a need that comes out of the false self. The goal is to develop an internal sense of ownership. You are your body. You are centered in your maleness. You don't carry it. It carries you. The pride you feel about your body should arise from your identification with other men. Do you understand the distinction?" "Absolutely," he said. "I've known both sides. The look at my body trip, which comes from narcissism, and on the other hand, the sense of centeredness on my masculinity. I know the difference, but sometimes it's hard to hang on to that other way of perceiving myself." "That's okay," I assured him. "What's important is that you know the difference." For a long time after I got my weight down, I felt proud because I had a good body that got me the attention of other guys. In the bars, guys would look at me, and that really made me feel good about myself. Yet in a way I hated it. It stood in the way of what I really wanted. Which was what? A man. Startled by this contradiction, I asked, "Your body stood in the way of your getting a man?" "Right. Explain that to me." "All I've ever wanted is to be close to a man, not a gay man. Someone straight, 100% natural and masculine man. But those men don't fall in love with me. They want what they can't be, and that's a woman. That's the paradox of the homosexual condition." Thinking on that, we ended our session. Charlie was soon making excellent progress in his male friendships. He joined a gym where he was discovering he could develop male friendships without being overwhelmed by sexual temptation. He now spoke of a new friend, Rich, whom he described as a great guy, very affirming, straight, and he has no idea what I'm dealing with. "I have one question," I said. "Any attraction to him?" "A slight one," Charlie admitted after a reflective pause. "Yeah, sort of. Sometimes I compare him to myself and find myself thinking, he's got something I don't have. From that, it sort of slips into a little bit of sexual attraction." He continued, "One day last week, Rich walked into the locker room. He had a t-shirt on and his muscles were really bulging. I wasn't feeling good about my skinny arms and chest, and I felt that attraction welling up in me. I said to myself, hey, if you want what he has, you have to work for it like he did. If you think he got that way overnight, you're crazy. He paid in sweat for that body." Of all the men I've worked with, Charlie was the best at utilizing a valuable technique of reparative therapy called self-mentor talk. The practice of talking to himself in the voice of an internalized, strong, benevolent father. He continued to talk to me about his new friend. "Rich always makes me laugh. He helps me be a little less serious. I like that sense of spontaneity in him, that enthusiasm and crazy humor. He doesn't blow every little thing out of proportion like I do." He was quiet a moment, then he reported the following. "The other day, I was hit with a truth that I really think came to me by the grace of God. I realized there is no one on the face of this earth who can give me my masculine identity. No other guy. It lies within me, only dormant. No one can give it to me, nor can I get to it by changing my external image. The real key to changing is actualizing what I already have in me." Charlie seemed eager to talk on. "Rich and I went hiking a couple of weeks back, and it looked like it was going to rain before we got back to the car. Rich didn't seem to care, so I kept quiet, but it was making me nervous. My mother always used to say, 'It's going to rain,' as though getting wet would be the death of me, like I would die of pneumonia. Most guys don't care if they get wet, of course, but Mother's voice was always played on like an old tape inside me. So I thought, if I get wet, I get wet. So what? Well, we were soaked, I thought. Now what do we do? Rich kept walking, so I said nothing, as though it wasn't important." Charlie tossed me a faint smile. as if he felt happy to have burst out of one more bond by which his mother had constricted him. "I really think I'm making progress," Charlie said. "I felt it in some dreams I've been having lately. Last night I dreamed I was standing at the base of a mountain trail with my friend Eric. We were wearing backpacks and hiking boots, and we had our shirts off in the afternoon sun. We were both looking muscular, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. Suddenly, 2 blonde girls walked past, and I said, 'Hey, Eric, don't they look good?' He said yes, and I was feeling this really light-hearted friendship." Very interesting. And how would you interpret that dream? Remember the 2 basic rules of dream interpretation. Everything in the dream is significant, and every part of the dream represents a part of you. He began, "There was a feeling in the dream of being happy about just being me, and I loved it. The sensation of being carefree and strong. I wanted to grab onto that feeling and just hold onto it. I don't feel that way often. It was a real high for me." I asked, "My question now is, why is Eric in the dream?" "Let me think about that," Charlie said. Sitting back, he squinted upwards and pondered. "Well, maybe I see qualities in him of which I wish I was in possession." "Sure," I said. "Do you feel you are gaining those qualities?" "Slowly, yes." "What qualities?" "The spontaneity, the freedom, that's what Eric represents. Those are the qualities that I most admire in him." "What part of you is represented by the mountain?" Charlie thought for a moment, then answered, "I suppose it's my struggle. This therapy feels like climbing a mountain. And you could say that in some ways Eric is my companion and guide." Charlie seemed reassured by this dream. I saw in him the satisfaction that comes from understanding how his dreams, in perfect symbolism, reflected his conscious strivings. Charlie had come a long way, and for that we were both happy. Many men have come to me chronically depressed and unhappy, going through the motions of life while missing some sort of essential vitality. Gay spokeswomen would say that these men were full of self-hatred because they had internalized society's homophobia. Or they would say that these men felt chronically empty because they didn't allow themselves to find fulfillment in a male lover. But that vitality had been missing for as long as Charlie could remember, and he knew it had to do with his lost masculinity. During the course of psychotherapy, each client goes through despairing times during which I try to make him aware of the new life that will emerge on the other side of his struggle. I stand by him while he endures the pain that is always a part of healing. As he asks time and time again, why it is he who must suffer. There were many months during which Charlie wondered whether he would ever make it over that mountain. In the final year of treatment, Charlie entered group therapy, where he contributed a strikingly thoughtful and insightful presence. Before long, the respect he was accorded by the members of the group was readily apparent. Whenever Charlie spoke, everyone listened. His clarity of expression and penetrating vision earned him the position of much admired leader. Charlie often set the direction of our group discussion. He made many close friends among the men, supporting them when they lost their direction. When he walked out of my office for the last time, I knew I wasn't the only man who would miss him. Charlie Keenan changed in many ways. What he wanted most from reparative therapy was to find a centeredness in his own masculine identity. Through that achievement, he hoped to find a diminishing of his homosexual distractions. After just over 2 years, he left my office feeling that he had achieved what he had come to therapy for. I still keep in my desk a piece of paper on which Charlie once wrote some reflections. "Today my therapy unravels the lies that inflicted this male insecurity upon me. My therapy has been a sophisticated process of discovering the truth, trying it on, and living it out confidently for the first time in my life. My therapy shows me I'm a full member of the club of men because I was born a man. My therapy puts me in the company of men with the same struggle. We believe in one another and help each other to live out our masculine energy and identity. We believe in one another and help each other to live out our masculine energy and identity, rather than perpetuate the mythic message that we are unworthy of the healthy male identity that all men are meant to enjoy. These 2.5 years have been a blessing of freedom and empowerment. My sense of satisfaction with my masculinity is now alive and growing. 1. I don't crave masculinity anymore. Instead, I have claimed it. 2. I no longer overvalue, sexually desire, or undervalue, defensively detach from, the men in my life. Instead, I stand with them as an equal. 3. I have lost my antagonism toward my father and find myself identifying more and more with him. 4. I speak up more often and am far more assertive. 5. In spirit, I am less repressed. 6. In action, I am more in control. I am more willing to take risks. 7. Through exercise, I've made better friends with and have less hatred toward my body. I may never be completely free of this limp I've had since I was a boy, but I've been making the most I can of my body. 8. I am able better to appreciate the feminine in my women friends because their contrast to myself is now more apparent. 9. I look for the masculine energy in all things and find ways to experience or express it genuinely from within, because to do so is to live and to heal. I know there are homosexual men who accept the idea that they were born that way. I challenge them. They are selling themselves short. They refuse to admit that they might be broken, as every human being is. They refuse to look for roots to their problem because it is repugnant to see where one has, perhaps unwittingly, said no to the responsibility that is placed upon us to live as we were created. It is a sin of pride that blinds these individuals, that tricks them into believing that brokenness is shameful. It is not. The real shame is in not accepting forgiveness and in not giving forgiveness. I have forgiven the men who have failed me, as I have forgiven myself for years of running away. It is my hope that every man who hurts from homosexuality may open himself to receiving the same grace that I have known. It was this grace that enabled me to see that my homosexual tendencies were not a cry to have another man, but a cry to have a manly me. Charlie still drops me a note now and then, and I am always happy to hear from him. The men in the group still miss him.